Lily Harper's heart pounded as she climbed the steps of Walker Publishing, one of the most prestigious publishing houses in the country. Dressed in her favorite blue blazer, what Sophie called her confidence uniform, Lily clutched her manuscript tightly, as if someone might snatch it away. She took a deep breath. This was it. After months of gathering courage and countless ignored emails, Jonathan Reed, the editor-in-chief, had finally agreed to a meeting to discuss her book. It wasn't an approval, not even close, but it was a start. As she rushed into the elevator just as the doors were closing, Lily tripped slightly, almost dropping her notes. A man beside her, tall, impeccably dressed, in a dark gray suit, with an air of refined boredom, caught a loose page before it could hit the floor. "Looks like you're carrying something important." His voice was deep, unhurried, the kind that belonged to someone used to being heard without effort. Lily gave a nervous smile. "Yes, my book, or at least what could be a book if someone decides it's worth publishing." He raised an eyebrow. "Romance?" "Yes, but before you say anything, it's not one of those predictable cliché romances." The man tilted his head slightly. "I didn't say anything." Lily crossed her arms. "You made the face. The romances are unrealistic and full of impossible promises face." A quiet chuckle escaped him. "Interesting. Do you always analyze people this quickly?" "Only when they underestimate my favorite literary genre." He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could say anything, the elevator jerked suddenly, and for a brief second, everything went dark before the emergency lights flickered on. Lily looked up, alarmed. "You've got to be kidding me." The man pressed a few buttons, but nothing happened. "Looks like we're stuck." The electronic panel showed they were somewhere between the 16th and 17th floor. Lily looked up at the ceiling as if expecting a solution to drop from the vents. "I knew today was going to go wrong." The man leaned casually against the opposite wall, watching her with curiosity. "Is your meeting that important?" Lily let out a short, humorless laugh. "Just enough to decide the future of my entire professional life. No big deal." "And what exactly are you hoping to get from it?" She hesitated for a second. "I want them to publish my book. I want someone to believe in it." He studied her for a moment. "Are you afraid of rejection?" "Of course. But not because I think the book is bad. It's because I know how hard it is to be taken seriously as a romance writer. People think that just because a story has love in it, it doesn't deserve respect." The man remained silent for a moment before saying, "So what makes your book different?" Lily looked at him. He seemed genuinely interested, not just being polite. "Because it's not about prepackaged happy endings, it's about people making choices and finding happiness along the way." Something shifted in his expression, as if he wasn't expecting that answer. "Sounds like you've thought a lot about this." "I've been thinking about this since I was 12. Before they could continue, a crackling sound came from the elevator's intercom, and a voice informed them that they were working on restoring the system. It would take a few more minutes. "Great," Lily muttered. "Exactly how I wanted to spend my day." The man observed her for a second before extending his hand. "Ethan Walker." Lily froze. "I'm sorry, what?" "Ethan Walker," he repeated calmly. She blinked a few times. "Walker, as in Walker Publishing?" You're the owner of this publishing house?" His lips curled slightly in amusement. "Yes, but I like hearing honest opinions about romance novels before mentioning that." Lily's face burned. "Oh my God. I just criticized the CEO of the company I want to be published by." Ethan chuckled. "And you made a great argument, by the way." The elevator jolted back to life, and within seconds the doors slid open on the floor of the publishing house. Lily was still reeling as Ethan stepped out first and looked back at her. "You said you want someone to believe in your book." She nodded, uncertain. "Then convince me," he said, crossing his arms. "Show me what makes it different." Before she could respond, Jonathan Reed appeared, frowning when he saw Ethan standing beside her. "Ah, so you've already met our aspiring author," Jonathan said, unimpressed. Ethan glanced at Lily for a brief second before turning to Jonathan. "Yes, and she has 2 weeks to prove to me she's worth betting on." Lily was speechless, Jonathan too. And then, Ethan gave a small, knowing smile and walked away, leaving Lily standing in the middle of the publishing house corridor, realizing that her life had just changed. Lily Harper was still standing in the middle of the publishing house corridor, trying to process what had just happened. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prove to Ethan Walker, CEO of Walker Publishing, that her book was worth publishing. She blinked a few times, as if that would somehow make the world return to normal. Jonathan Reed, the editor-in-chief, did not look happy. 2 weeks, he repeated, staring at Ethan. You want her to rewrite part of her own book in just 2 weeks? Ethan turned his gaze to Lily. Not the whole book, just a section. Enough to convince me. Jonathan crossed his arms, clearly displeased. Ethan, we receive hundreds of manuscripts a month. We don't have time to hand out challenges to unknown authors. Exactly, Ethan responded, unfazed. And yet, how many of those books have truly surprised us lately? Jonathan didn't reply right away. Lily could feel the tension between them, and for a moment, she wanted to shrink into herself. Maybe this was the part where they realized she wasn't worth the trouble. But then Ethan turned back to her. Do you accept the challenge? Lily's heart pounded. It was madness. A part of her wanted to run out of there before she messed everything up. But at the same time, this was the biggest opportunity of her life. She took a deep breath. Yes. Jonathan sighed and rubbed his temples. Fine. Let's see what you can do. Ethan gave a slight smile. Then it settled. Lily had no idea what she had just gotten herself into. But there was no turning back now. You have got to be kidding me. Sophie Miller nearly dropped her slice of pizza when Lily finished telling the story. So let me get this straight. You went in for your book meeting, got stuck in an elevator with the CEO, and now he's giving you 2 weeks to convince him? Lily sighed, taking a sip of the wine Sophie had poured to calm her down. Yes, that all happened in less than an hour. That's insane. But oh my God, that's amazing. Sophie clapped excitedly. Do you realize what this means? Lily groaned. That I have 14 days to prove to a skeptical CEO that romance isn't just fluff? That this is your chance to show the world you were meant for this. Sophie pointed at Lily's manuscript sitting on the table. You already wrote this book with your heart. Now you just need to find the best way to make someone else feel it. Lily sighed. Easy for you to say. You don't have to impress a guy who has zero patience for romance tropes. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Maybe that's the problem. You're trying to write for him instead of writing for yourself, Lily frowned. What do you mean? You wrote this book because you wanted to tell this story, not because you wanted to convince Ethan Walker of anything. So stop thinking about him and write like no one else is going to read it. Lily bit her lip, deep in thought. Maybe Sophie was right. Maybe the answer wasn't in trying to impress Ethan. Maybe it was in remembering why she wrote this story in the first place. The next morning, Lily was called in for a meeting with Jonathan Reed. He sat behind his sleek glass desk, fingers intertwined over a thick stack of papers. Do you know why I called you in? Lily swallowed. Because I'm taking too long to deliver the new section? That too. But mainly because I think you're wasting your time. She frowned. What do you mean? Jonathan sighed. Ethan Walker is a great businessman, but he doesn't publish books because he falls in love with stories. He publishes because he knows what sells, and right now, romance isn't selling. Lily felt her stomach tighten. Then why did he give me this chance? Jonathan studied her for a moment before replying. I could say he just wants to test your skills, but... He leaned forward slightly. Let's be honest, Lily. Ethan is interested in you. Lily froze. What? He's never given this kind of opportunity to an unknown author before, and it's not like him to get personally involved in a manuscript. She blinked, trying to process that. Ethan isn't interested in me. Jonathan gave her a knowing smirk. Are you sure? Lily opened her mouth to argue, but she wasn't sure of anything anymore. At the end of the day, Lily walked through the publishing house, her mind spinning. She and Ethan had been spending time together. She felt something different when they talked. But did that mean he was actually interested in her? As she tried to sort through her emotions, she suddenly heard his voice behind her. Lily? She turned around. He was standing there watching her with that usual calm intensity. Are you okay? He asked, noticing her expression. Lily hesitated. She wanted to ask. She wanted to know if Jonathan was right. But what if he was? What if she was just some fleeting impulse in Ethan Walker's perfectly controlled life? She shook her head. I'm just tired. Ethan studied her for a moment as if he knew there was more, but chose not to press. If you need to talk, I'm here. Lily's chest tightened. Thanks, Ethan. He nodded and walked away. And for the first time, Lily realized the problem wasn't just the book. The problem was what she was feeling for Ethan, and the fear of what that meant. Lily Harper stared at her laptop as if it were her enemy. The cursor blinked on the empty screen, taunting her. She needed to rewrite a section of her book, something that would surprise Ethan Walker and prove that her romance was memorable. But what if Jonathan Reed was right? What if her book was just average? She sighed and sank into the couch, looking over at Sophie, who was flipping through her manuscript with a pencil in hand. You're overthinking this, Lil. Overthinking? The CEO of one of the biggest publishing houses in the country is waiting for me to write something that convinces him romance is worthwhile. No pressure at all, right? Sophie grinned. You already wrote this story once, now you just have to feel it again. Lily sighed. Easy for you to say. You don't have to impress a guy who has zero patience for romance tropes. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Maybe that's the problem. You're trying to write for him instead of writing for yourself. Lily frowned. What do you mean? You wrote this book because you wanted to tell this story, not because you wanted to convince Ethan Walker of anything. So stop thinking about him and write as if no one else is going to read it. Lily bit her lip, deep in thought. Maybe Sophie was right. Maybe the answer wasn't in trying to impress Ethan. Maybe it was in remembering why she wrote this story in the first place. The next evening, Ethan invited Lily to a dinner at the publishing house. This is not a date, in case you're wondering, he had said over the phone. I just want to understand your creative process. Lily almost replied that her current creative process involved panic and cookies, but she figured it was best to keep that to herself. Now, sitting across from him in a quiet restaurant inside the Walker Publishing building, she tried not to feel completely out of place. So, Ethan began, setting down his wine glass. What was the first thing that made you want to write? Lily was surprised by the question. I think I always wanted to tell stories. Ever since I was little, I would imagine dialogues between characters that didn't exist. He gave a slight smile. And why romance? Because the world is already hard enough. I like the idea of creating stories where people find happiness, even after going through difficult things. Ethan studied her for a moment before asking, but what makes a romance memorable to you? Lily hesitated. I'm still trying to figure that out. Ethan nodded. Then that's your mission. Mission? If you want people to feel something unexpected with your story, you first need to understand what makes you feel something unexpected. Lily didn't know what to say. Why did he make everything sound so simple? But at the same time, something inside her started to click. Maybe the answer wasn't in what she thought she should write. Maybe it was in what truly made her feel something. As they walked out of the restaurant, Ethan accompanied Lily to the entrance of the building. Have you ever thought about writing? Lily asked suddenly. He chuckled softly. I'm a CEO. That doesn't answer the question. Ethan was quiet for a moment. I have, but I never published anything. Why not? He looked out at the city lights in front of them. Because some stories are hard to tell. Lily saw something in his expression, something he rarely let show. You have a story of your own, don't you? Ethan smirked slightly. We all do. Lily felt her heart beat faster. Maybe the CEO who didn't believe in romance wasn't so skeptical after all. And maybe uncovering the story he never told was the key to writing hers in the most unforgettable way possible. Lily Harper sat at her usual cafe table, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The cursor blinked mockingly on the blank page. 4 days had passed since Ethan Walker had given her the challenge, and she still hadn't written a single word that felt right. What makes a romance memorable? The answer should have been simple. But the pressure of impressing Ethan made her second-guess everything that once felt natural. She picked up her phone and sent a message to Sophie. Lily, if I throw my laptop out the window, do you think my career can still be saved? Her reply came seconds later. Sophie, if it's from the first floor, maybe. If it's from the 10th, only if you can fly. Lily chuckled, but didn't feel any better. She needed to figure out how to make the story feel real again, and fast. The next morning, Lily was called into a meeting with Jonathan Reed. He sat behind his sleek glass desk, fingers intertwined, a stack of papers in front of him. Do you know why I called you in? Lily swallowed. Because I'm taking too long to submit the new section? That too, but mainly because I think you're wasting your time, she frowned. What do you mean? Jonathan sighed. Ethan Walker is a great businessman, but he doesn't publish books because he falls in love with stories. He publishes because he knows what sells, and right now, romance isn't selling. Lily felt a knot form in her stomach. Then why did he give me this chance? Jonathan studied her for a moment before replying. I could say he just wants to test your skills, but he leaned forward. Let's be honest, Lily. Ethan is interested in you. Lily froze. What? He's never given this kind of opportunity to an unknown author before, and it's not like him to get personally involved in a manuscript. She blinked, trying to process that. Ethan isn't interested in me. Jonathan smirked. Are you sure? Lily opened her mouth to argue, but she wasn't sure of anything anymore. At the end of the day, Lily walked through the publishing house, her thoughts racing. She and Ethan had been spending time together. She felt something different when they talked. But did that mean he was actually interested in her? As she tried to untangle her emotions, she heard his voice behind her. Lily. She turned around. Ethan stood there watching her with that usual calm intensity. Are you okay? He asked, noticing her expression. Lily hesitated. She wanted to ask. She wanted to know if Jonathan was right. But what if he was? What if she was just some fleeting impulse in Ethan Walker's perfectly controlled life? She shook her head. I'm just tired. Ethan studied her for a moment as if he knew there was more, but chose not to press. If you need to talk, I'm here. Lily's chest tightened. Thanks, Ethan. He nodded and walked away. And for the first time, Lily realized the problem wasn't just the book. The problem was what she was feeling for Ethan, and the fear of what that meant. Lily Harper had been up all night. After her conversation with Jonathan and the brief encounter with Ethan, her mind was a whirlwind. Ethan is interested in you. She kept repeating that sentence, trying to figure out how she felt about it. And the worst part, she already knew the answer. But there was something even more urgent at the moment. Her book. She grabbed her laptop, opened the file, and started typing. This time she didn't think about what Ethan wanted to read. She didn't think about what would sell. She just wrote what she truly wanted to tell. By the time the sun began to rise, she finally smiled. She had something worth showing. 2 days later, Lily entered the Walker Publishing conference room with her heart pounding. Jonathan Reed sat at the head of the table, reviewing some documents. Ethan Walker sat beside him, looking straight at her. Ready? Ethan asked. Lily nodded and handed over the new version of the excerpt. The room fell into complete silence as they read. She watched Ethan's every reaction carefully. Midway through the passage, she saw his expression change. His eyes sharpened, his posture leaned forward. He felt something. When he finished, he set the pages down on the table and looked at her. You found the answer. Jonathan sighed and placed the papers aside. I have to admit, I'm impressed. Lily's eyes widened. So, does that mean? Ethan picked up the last page and read the final line aloud. Maybe the best romances aren't the ones that end the way we expect, but the ones that make us feel something new. A faint smile touched his lips. You did it. Your book is getting published. Lily felt the air leave her lungs. I did it? You did, Ethan confirmed. Jonathan rolled his eyes. Just don't get used to winning challenges this easily, Harper. Lily still couldn't believe it. Her dream was coming true. After the meeting, Lily was still trying to process everything when she heard Ethan's voice behind her. Lily? She turned to face him. Yes? He was holding something in his hand. A manuscript. But it wasn't hers. I want to show you something, he said, extending the pages to her. Lily took them and read the title. It was a short story, written by Ethan Walker. You wrote this? He nodded. It's a story I've never shown anyone, until now. Lily felt a tightness in her chest. Why? A faint smirk crossed his face. Because some stories only make sense when you find the right person to read them. Lily's heart raced. Ethan. He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. It wasn't just your book that made me feel something unexpected. A warm feeling spread through her. She smiled. Maybe the best romances are the ones we don't plan for, And there, surrounded by pages that would change their lives, Ethan Walker and Lily Harper began to write their own story.
Fed, what did you think of the story? Leave your opinion in the comments and let us know which city you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel for more upcoming stories. Thank you so much.